Hi, welcome back. We're doing residential lease requirements. Some of these are specific to the state of Maryland and some are not. So you decide whether you want to fast forward through the video or not. This may help you on your test. Leases that are longer than 5 years must be recorded. Now we're in the middle of a unit, so if you need to go back and review anything, you can go ahead and do that on the last video listed. We are talking mostly about leases. As a real estate license agent, salesperson, you will be doing leases as well. We don't have as many as we used to because the Airbnb is kind of taken over that. But we still have them, and so you need to know the laws. Some of these are specific to the state of Maryland and some are not, but you will need to know your state specifically. A lot of these can be overlapped in your state. I don't know about 5 years. I don't see anything about being recorded for 5 years, so I'm going to say no on that. With a lease fewer than 7 the tenant's possession of the property is considered constructive notice of the tenant's right. Fewer than 7 years. I don't see anything with 7 years on here. I'm going to say no. Landlords are provided verbal notice to each of their tenants as their rights. I don't think that's either. I think you have to do it in writing. Tenants' right include the right to request condition, and to be present at move out. I would say yes on that. The time frame is measured beginning the date of the lease's occupancy begins. Landlords are required that tenants may peacefully enter the lease at the beginning of the lease. All right, let's go back up here and look at that. More than 7 years, leases are no longer required to be recorded. Okay, leases fewer than 7 years does not need to be recorded. Peaceful and entry landlords are required by law to ensure their tenants peacefully and enter the lease at the beginning of their occupancy. All right. Time frame of all leases measured on the date the lease is entered into, not the date that the occupancy enters. Okay, that's kind of tricky. So those kind of questions you need to make sure you look for, because that's a trick question there. Occupancy and the date the lease starts could be two separate things. Okay, with a lease fewer than 7 years is considered constructive notice, such as true. This is why leases of fewer than 7 years do not need to be recorded. So that one is true. I think I put false. Okay, and that one's false too. So false, true, false, false, true, false. All right, let's go and try it again. False, true, false. False, true, false. A tenant's right to request written property inspections. Yes. All right, this one we got wrong last time. No. Let's get that right this time. Good. Okay. A little safety goes a long way. Oh, gosh. I hate these kinds of things. First off, that property was built before 1978, which means, among other things, you are going to have to protect your family from lead. Now, this might be Maryland specific, but I know in Maryland we have to do this because of the lead laws, so you'll need to check that. And because of the age, the feds, so this is the feds, not the state, so you will need to know this. And because of its age, the feds require you to disclose any lead point hazards on the property before the tenant is found. You also need to have a bunch of copies of the blank pamphlet. Full risk reduction. It's illegal for you to, under the fair housing laws, to require them to disclose the blood level of their children. Sorry, not quite right. So you have to perform the full risk reduction measures, and then this is a pamphlet. Okay, so let's try this again. 1978. You're going to have to perform lead-based hazards and properly lead-based hazards in the property and get a risk reduction certificate. And because of its age, the feds require you to disclose any full risk measures, and you will have to have this and fair housing laws. Let's see if we got it right. Oh my God, we still got it wrong. Okay. All right. Goodness gracious. You have to perform full risk measures and disclose any hazards on the property, and then you gotta get this done, and then you gotta do this. Okay. Goodness gracious. Basically, if the house is before 1978, you gotta make sure you protect your tenants or whoever. Even if they're buying a house, you still gotta do all this stuff. All right, better safe than sorry. Landlords are required by law to make sure all residential rental premises are free from dangerous defects and pose any hazards to their occupants. Carbon monoxide must be installed on new construction that's run solely on electric power. I don't know about that one. And carbon monoxide gas. I don't know about electric. All right, depending on the age, they may be required to install smoke detectors and sprinklers. I don't know if that has to do with age or just laws. All right, under Baltimore City, which is specific to Maryland, by the way, you have to check with your city if you have any laws in your city. But a tenant can sue the landlord for breach of warranty if they don't repair anything that endangers their... I mean, this should be like a state thing, really. I mean, come on. If something endangers your tenant's life, health, and safety, you should fix it. It's a shame that we have to have a law to tell you to do that, but that's the way it is in the city, right? The rent escrow law encourages tenants to withhold their rent payments until the landlord fixes anything. I don't know. I've never heard of that. Let me go back up here and look for that. Rent escrow laws. Here it is. Maryland requires that landlords make sure all residential rental properties are free from defects, and if a landlord doesn't repair anything, the tenant can refuse to pay rent. How about that? That's interesting. Lack of heat, lack of adequate sewage, rodent infestation. I did not know that because I was living in a place in Maryland that had rodent infestation, and I did not know that I did not have to pay the rent. But that would be... All right, this is false. Oh, okay, it is false. The rent escrow law encourages tenants to withhold. Okay, well, all right. Serious or dangerous conditions. I would think that dangerous conditions, false. All right, well, it says no here, but over here it says yes. I don't know what to tell you. Okay, this one is carbon monoxide. They are required to put carbon monoxide on to anything that has... All right, here we go. Smoke detectors must be installed. Maryland law requires carbon in new construction. Okay. I thought that was a gas thing, so apparently it's not. Oh, you have to check with your state. But in Maryland, apparently you have to have carbon monoxide. So everything here is true except for this one. The rent encourages tenants. True, false, true. All right, let's move on before we run out of time. The security deposits requirements. No more than 2 months. Give the tenant a receipt for the deposit. Name and address of the bank where you deposit information information about the tenant's right to receive a list of all damages to the rental property with upon 15 days of occupancy. Okay, I think that's it. Fantastic work. Okay. Part 2, you must deposit the tenant into an escrow in a federally insured bank. You have 7 days to deposit it. The total of all monies must equal that of security deposit, or the landlord is liable. Should your tenant fall on hard times and creditors come knocking, the creditors can take the security deposit. Now, you have to pay the tenant simple interest on security deposits. I don't know about that one either. Do I have anything to check on the security deposits here? Rent law. The rent law. The tenant's rent is to be paid in an escrow account. And that's all. So security deposits. Here we go. Okay, must be equal to 2 months. They must give them a receipt. They must have a written notice of any damages within 15 days of occupancy. And they have to put this into a federally insured bank. What was the question here? $100. So here it says you have to pay interest on security deposits of $100 or more. I think it's $50. So I think this one is false. Okay, so landlord must send notice within 40 days of lease termination if there's any problems with the apartment or rent that they left behind. You must receive the security deposit. You must deposit the money within 30 days. Okay. All right, so let's try it again. You must deposit in a foreign bank. You have 7 days. You have 30 days. Total money must equal the landlord. No. This is no, and this is true. Okay, a lot of lease requirements. All right, must be, and you need to know these laws too, and especially if you're going into property management in a specific state. Whatever your state is, you need to know all the laws. Some of these overlap, as I keep saying in most of my videos. Must be provided for rent paid in cash upon tenant request. Must include the date's amount of rent paid. I would say rent receipts. All landlords must provide payment receipts. The tenant pays in cash. The tenant requests a receipt. Rent receipts, I guess. Must include the dates and amounts paid. That's a record of rent payments. Can result in unpaid rent loss. Failure to demand rent. If a failure to demand rent for 20 years in a row, the tenant could receive a fee simple title to the property. How about that? So let's just say they got killed and they've been dead for 20 years and haven't been asking for rent. You can take over the property. I mean, how often does that happen? It must have happened once if they have a law about it. All right, if you don't pay rent in 3 months, they can file charges on you. That's so crazy, that 20-year thing. That must have happened too, because normally they don't make a law like that unless it happened. Okay, which of the following lease requirement applies to all of Maryland? Lease requirements. Oh my goodness. All right, executes a lease of 25 days or longer. Condo development, the landlord must provide the tenant with applicable laws, rules, and restrictions. And I think that's it. No, that is not correct. Okay. And a household pet. I guess it's this one. Annual residential statement. This is just with Baltimore City, so I don't know about that. I'm going to say here. Okay. Alright. Avoiding disputes. You cannot do based on them. Alright, so this is like a really long unit. Residential ground. A little ditty about ground leases. Ground leases, I don't know if they have these in other states. We do have a lot of places in Maryland that have ground leases. And I think this might be for trailer parks too. I'm not sure. Ground leases. Ground rent, I know. Ground leases, I think it's like for mobile homes. Yeah, mobile home sites. Okay. And super confusing. Is a ground tenant. He pays periodic ground rent to the landowner. Harold Lawson, who holds the ground lease, in return for rent, he obtains the use of the property to build upon. He also owns the redeemable, including buildings. Because his ground lease is redeemable, he will own the land, unlike his buddy Frank, who has a redeemable. I guess this is improvements. And then this is irredeemable. Let's see. Okay. So Mitchell is a ground tenant. He pays periodic ground rent. And the landowner owns the ground rental. Some property owners used to do this. They get a lot of money doing that. It's not as common anymore. But I have seen some homes, older homes, that still have these ground leases on them. Under Maryland law, owners of a leasehold or fee simple that could be used for 4 or more dwellings are not subject to those property with ground leases. Let's see. I have no idea. Let's see if that is a law. Contracts. Ground lease amendments. We had so much mess in Maryland with these ground leases and ground rent. Lawsuits from communities going against the builders for these things, doing illegal things. I can't even remember what it was, but that might be why they have these new laws on here, because it's the first time I've seen this, but it's super crazy. All right, I have no idea. We can say yes. I don't see the answer in here. When a ground rent is listed for sale, the owner must include on for sale signs, cost of capitalization. I don't think they need to put it on the for sale sign, but they need to, it needs to be in the listing that they have ground rent. A seller is not required to disclose the property if they're subject to ground rent. No, I disagree. I think they have to disclose that. That's pretty important. It's like an HOA fee, or worse. If the ground tenant fails to pay rent, they breach the terms of the lease, and the land will revert to the landowner. All right, anytime a property is subject to ground lease is sold, the contractor of the sale must explain that if the ground rent is not paid, they could lose it. Under the 2012 Ground Lease Amendment, ground leaseholders who do not register their ground leases are subject to penalty. I believe that's correct, and that's not correct. This is also true. They need to put it on the for sale sign, really. That's kind of weird. Okay. True, true, false. True, true, false. So we got 2 trues, a false, and 2 trues and a false. True, true. Why don't they need to put that on there? False. Okay. These are a little bizarre. I'm not going to dwell on this too long because a lot of you are not specific to Maryland, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. But if you are interested in this, then this will help you. Okay. Build a story. All right. This would be considered termination through lease termination, eviction, self-help eviction. Landlord acts in a court involvement, shuts off the utilities, and landlord acts without the court's involvement. Tenants are entitled to recover damages if they do this. They got to be really careful about these kind of laws if you ever become a landlord. You cannot retaliate by evicting a tenant based on any of the following. Abandonment. It does not relieve the tenant from terms of the lease. Yeah, I hear about this stuff in Baltimore a lot. Okay. All right. They've decided to move somewhere else when their lease ends. This will be considered termination through mutual agreement. If the Suez family had vacated before they are no longer considered to fit, this would have been an abandonment, I would think. Self-help. No. Constructive. It could be constructive eviction. She is terminating his lease through the blank. Mrs. Hudson is excited to get rid of John because he consistently pays his rent late. She has gone through proper channels to legally end his lease. She is terminating his lease through eviction, I would think. If Mrs. Hudson had not gone through the proper channels, this would have been an self-help eviction. Decided to terminate the contract through expiration. Expiration, and then it's through mutual agreement. Okay. Okay, terminate through expiration, and this one is mutual agreement. Constructive eviction. Terminate his lease through eviction. This is self-help. Okay. Where did my tenant go? She still has to pay rent even though she moved out. Lease terminated. Maryland tournament may terminate any tenancy provided the lease is ending by giving the landlord 30-day notice. I thought it had to be 60-day notice. It might only have to be 30 days. Okay, it says here 30 days. So only 30 days. And a stated will may be terminated by will by either party. True. Only the tenant can terminate month to month. I don't think that's true. By giving 2 weeks notice. Either party may terminate. A periodic estate automatically renews itself unless one person terminates. In every county but Montgomery, the landlord must provide 1 month written notice. In every county, the landlord must provide 1 month notice to tenant from year to year. Here it is right here. It says for year to year, a 3-month notice must be provided. So that's false. Once a landlord is given the required terminate, the landlord can file a simple court to dispose a tenant from the property and take the property back. I guess that's right. Apparently. Okay, we got all them right. So we're going to move on. I'm not even going to go slow because we're running out of time. All right. We looked at the way that leases can be terminated. And this video is getting ready to end. If you are staying with me, the unit exam on all this is coming up. It's probably going to be something else because it's 14 questions. So thank you all for staying with me.